The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Return the Jewels. Also, there's explicit language. Hey everyone, welcome to the 20th episode of Return the Jewels. That's right, 20 episodes. That's why this one is very special. And I know that's the 20th time I've said that the episode is very special, but this one is very special. So a couple episodes I told you I had my friend on, Dr. Deer. She the lung doctor, ICU doctor, friend from Millsaps, my college years. This week, today, this episode, right now that you're watching or listening, I have my good friend Madhav Saxena on, also from the Millsaps here. It's the other guy, the other brown guy that was in my class. It was just me and him. And, we formed a lifelong friendship. And you can get more context in the interview. We'll get to it. But this was a really good one. We talked about a lot of things. Madhav works in a digital ad agency. He makes websites. So he's kind of on the other side of the creative things, the creative business side of things. So, his insight on a lot of these issues is worth checking out. And so, today we talked about some cool stuff. Code switching, Gully rap, which is like that was the appropriation or appreciation segment. Um, with digital advertising, internet privacy, that kind of stuff. We talked about that movie, The White Tiger. If you see our faces in the thumbnails and are thinking that would probably maybe that these guys will talk about the movie, you are correct. We talked about the movie White Tiger. We talked about we talked about the farmers' protests and what is like the underlying thought processes that go into different sides of that, and what's really going on, or at least how we see what's really going on, and just kind of other stuff really caught up, and yeah, it's a good episode. It's a long one. You'll like it. uh Enjoy.
Farmers
You're right.
protest.
So wait. Meena Harris is
Mm-hmm.
her niece. Okay, I followed her on Instagram like right after, I guess, the election.
Mm-hmm.
She's popping up in the thing. I thought she was like her sister, but okay, she's her niece. Is she like just a personality for being her niece, or is she like in her own right, like a person? Well, I mean, yeah, a
I'm not
person.
sure. I
Obviously.
think she's in. I don't know why I'm thinking this, but I think she's in like grad school or law school or something like that. I could be completely
Oh, okay.
wrong. But
Oh,
so I guess
yeah,
at this point, mostly, yeah, probably from
yeah.
being
She probably right. Yeah, I mean,
her niece. She's
um,
probably getting all the fun death threats and rape threats from the Namas right now, though.
yeah, yeah. No, no, no.
Let's see.
So, yeah, she is. I saw a post about like they're burning effigies of her with that girl Greta Thunberg,
Yeah,
who's she's like the 16, 17-year old sweet Norwegian climate activist.
yeah,
Her and Meena Harris and Rihanna spoke
yeah.
out about. I wouldn't say they spoke out
Dude, that's
really.
the funny part,
They
right?
just
Like,
they're like, hey, why aren't people talking about this? And then now they're burning effigies of them. And somebody called her, what was it? So there's this comedian. Her name is Zubi Ahmad. She had like a TikTok that was really funny, where she's like, she played a Bollywood actress. She was like, oh my God, Rihanna, why'd you do this, you terrorist porn singer? By the way, I pressed record a little while
okay.
ago. Uh, we were just getting into the farmers protest stuff, but we're gonna talk about that later in this interview because I do want to get into that. but people are probably wondering who you are. I mean, the two people that do watch, actually, they probably already know who you are, and they're like, "Oh, whoa, it's Madhav! Look at that! I haven't seen him in forever. Wow, look at that!" But maybe I should reach out to him. But good to see you, two people that do watch. I will no, you will reveal yourselves to me soon because I can see the metrics. But
Oh,
uh, my friend, my really good friend for what, like 15,
15?
16,
Yeah,
15,
something
16
like that.
years now. Yeah. Madhav Saxena. Did I say that right?
You did. You did.
I did. Okay, great. Okay, because I know you know that I ask in every episode whether or not I say it right because sometimes, depending on how dark you are, sometimes you anglicize your name to make it more palatable. It's just another either self defense technique, adaptation technique. Maybe it's a first generation thing. Maybe it's just like a being in America thing. Maybe they do that in England too, but you anglicize your name to make it more palatable. So I know you personally in like, in college, we were roommates. We were first roommates in college. Well,
There was a
well,
situation
there's a
there.
situation. We'll talk about it. But I know that you personally have had your name pronounced all sorts of weird ways in our little White Haven liberal, tiny, well, not really liberal, but
Yeah.
tiny little white pocket of
Yeah, so
liberal art.
I don't correct. Uh, I
You don't.
think when I was like, so I came here like, and immediately I was put into kindergarten. When my family came here,
You were not born in the U.S.
I was not, no.
Okay.
But so like immediately, within a week or two of arrival, thrown into kindergarten, and I just let it. Uh, so I think probably like the first teacher was like, "All right, Madhav Saxena,"
Mm,
and I just let that stick. That's how it is today, pretty much. Even
kindergarten.
like I think
You didn't have that fire burning inside of you. It was like, no, it's mother.
no,
No.
absolutely not. And I
No, Miss
still really
Collins.
don't.
No.
Yeah, and I still really don't. I don't know if it's the fact that I've just gotten used to it, so that the butchered version is just kind of my name now, or I think part of it also is just I'm lazy. Like if I fuck with you hard, I'll eventually correct you if you're saying it wrong. But like if I just meet somebody, I'm like, yeah, whatever, however you want to say it, essentially.
Are you? Is it just you just don't want to be confrontational? I mean, surely it's got to make you feel a certain way.
Somebody says it wrong?
Yeah.
No,
No.
because why would they? Why would they know how to correctly say it? Honestly, I mean,
I mean, do you think that somebody saying it would want to know they're saying it right? What if I'm like, oh, Madhav, hey, Madhav, and then I know you for years, and I tell, oh, that's my friend Madhav. That's Madhav. Yeah,
yeah.
look, it's right there in the name.
Okay, so
Madhav.
I'll go further with this. So somebody will be like, so if somebody pronounces it wrong,
Right.
they'll often ask, like, wait, did I say that right? Like, probably like 80% of the time, they will ask, did I say that right? And I will just say yes.
Okay, what's a character trait personality that distinguishes that 80% from that 20%?
I think, I don't know. I've never thought about it as character trait. What I've found with that is that, it's been more so in the last 4 or 5 years where that's kind of become a thing for me, where people give a shit or want to show that they give a shit. I don't know enough to care. So all I know is that it's been sort of a more recent thing,
Okay,
but
aside from character trait, does that
oh, I'll give you this actually. Uh, Probably last 5-10 years, I would say I'm surrounded mostly by more woke-ish people.
okay?
So skewing very liberal and kind of
Meaning you could
wanting
ask
to.
more whether or not you say it right. Or they
Yeah. So either they care or they want it to look like they care. I don't know.
They want to look like they care. So
Whereas
you
y-
think that okay, fine. Political lines, yes. What about age, race, and sex lines?
I don't
Does
think
there
I've
any difference?
found I don't think I've found that or I've noticed that.
Yeah, I don't think old people would care. I don't know, but Madhav, Madhav Saxena, you weren't my first roommate. I actually had to request for a change of roommates, and your roommate actually left the college. We both went
Yeah.
to college in Jackson, Mississippi. Your roommate left because of Katrina. This was 2005 fall. So you had a vacancy in that room,
Yeah.
and I took it because I walked in on my roommate one time in a very weird situation. So I got a roommate request change, and then we were the first roommates, and we were the only. Well, we weren't the only two. Were the only two South Asian guys
In our
in
class, I
our
think
class.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so, and that kind of became like a weird identity thing when we were 18.
'Cause what it
And
was so we were the two guys and then were there two girls? I remember
I
two
mean, Leica
girls.
and Neha. I don't know
Yeah,
if there
that's
were
who I
other.
remember.
I can't remember there being other like.
I feel like that was a small
Yeah, just
I
in
feel
our
like the
class alone. I actually
yeah.
had Leica on this podcast. She's a professor of medicine and a critical care pulmonary care doctor, meaning she was like been running the ICUs and stuff during all
Oh, so
COVID, and it's
you got the what do you say, the
great
first hand
experience.
view or first hand knowledge of all of that
Yeah, yeah, and
pandemic.
she's three, so I gotta have Neha on here at some
She's
point.
also a doctor of some sort, right? I don't know her
Yes, yes,
specialty, but
yes, yes, she is, but I don't. Yeah, I don't know her specialty either. And I mean, we wouldn't have to talk about COVID, I guess, but like the extent to which she's had to, deal with this pandemic and all. I am starting to see, actually, quick tangent on this topic about like the unseen trauma and all the stuff that healthcare workers and everyone are going through because of the pandemic. Not only seeing so much death, mortality, and like
mhm.
unpredictability of a thing you don't know, but also like it's compounded by the fact that people are denying the thing's existence and leading these movements to
Oh, that's
anti-mask and
true.
all of that stuff. And so it's like, I mean, if you're a healthcare worker or a doctor and you're thinking like, I have to preserve the health and improve the health of these people that don't even want my existence. They think I'm some, plant or hoax. But it's like the trauma of that, and it's like they're really making the problem worse, and it's like people's reckless behavior. But like how jaded would healthcare workers have become now in treating, like how shredded has bedside manner probably become because of this pandemic. you know
Mm.
what are the family lives look like of these healthcare workers? How are they treating their children? How are they treating their spouses? What, like, these are war veterans.
Mm.
But anyways, quick tangent, I've been seeing a couple more like political cartoons and stuff like that depicting that side of this whole issue.
Right.
But I don't know how big of a conversation it'll really be, because I mean, I feel like we're doing a lot of scrambling now, and people like to make the joke about whatever about 2020 being a dud year, all this stuff, and this year's, but like I feel like now we are doing a lot of scrambling to unpack a lot of the last few years and figure out where all the damage is. I'm re-recording this on Sunday the 7th, and this will come out on Wednesday the 10th. So hopefully what I'm saying now doesn't have like a radical shift in the whole world in the next 4 days
Right.
or 3 days, but we'll see. We'll see. Okay, That took forever, and I've just been filibustering. So, Madhav, my first roommate, real technically, uh, we established kind of like a South Asian collective identity or whatever. I talked to Lake on the last episode. The thing about Millsaps Masala, trying to really bring the culture or whatever, but we were 18-year-old kids. You, an immigrant, lived the culture, brought the culture, adapted to the American culture, going through like high school, middle school, all that stuff in New Orleans and Houston, or just New
Growing up
Orleans?
was only New Orleans.
It's only New Orleans. Okay.
Yeah.
So growing up, you grew up in New Orleans, coming from Hyderabad.
Uh, Not quite.
No, where'd you
Came
come from?
from Allahabad in
Okay,
UP.
in UP.
My mom's side is from there, so as an adult and stuff, or growing up, I've spent a lot of time in Hyderabad,
Yeah.
but I was born and technically lived in Allahabad.
So I'm not saying it right.
What?
Hyderabad?
Hyderabad. It's
Hyderabad? What did they say it like?
well, so it's named after Hyder, and so that would be in that sense it would be Hyderabad.
Okay, so
But
what is Hyder?
I don't, huh?
What is Hyder?
the the Mughal emperor, I think, at some point, or
Okay,
not Mughal, but the kingdom of Hyderabad. I don't know. History is probably off there, but after
but
some
we
very
are okay.
important
Let me just
emperor.
take this moment then to just say we're in season 2 of Return the Jewels. This has just been kind of like getting ourselves together kind of thing, but our history and research will be more on point. Going forward, I will read more scholarly things and I will link them and I will use my critical thinking to evaluate more primary sources and less hearsay. We followed the best evidence rule here, or we will. We strive to. So okay, we go to Millsaps. That's the small liberal arts college we went to in Mississippi. We're friends. You know, we both have to navigate, be in these white spaces, and that kind of informs and conforms our identity.
Mhm.
So, you know, when we talk about this stuff, like one thing I wanted to talk to you about a lot, or want to talk to you about a lot, was about how and I feel like it's natural, the ability to code switch, and whether or not it's an ability or whether or not it's innate and subconscious. So we'll talk about that, but let's get into what you do. So what do you do?
I'm a web developer at a digital marketing agency.
Hmm.
So I sit in a corner and pump out websites for landscapers and other pest control people, and then I hand it off to my coworkers, and then they come up with ad campaigns and stuff like that to get more business for those clients.
So basically, some of the most important work currently happening,
Yeah,
technically.
yeah, that's true.
And you must have seen a boom. No, I mean, like, yeah, that sounded sarcastic, but it was. I wasn't really being sarcastic because, like, literally every industry needs that kind of face and that sort of marketing and that sort of arm. So, I mean,
Hmm.
if your firm is like actively doing that for people, empowering people, and you're benefiting off that, you must be learning a very valuable skill.
Yeah, I'm definitely in meetings, so not my department directly, but I'm definitely in meetings with the people who are doing that kind of stuff, and so I definitely learn a lot and I listen closely um to that. And it's weird, like COVID has been like, it has actually been a boom for a lot of
Yeah, I would
digital
imagine. I
marketing
mean,
stuff. Like,
everyone has to move into a remote working space or the ability to work remotely and have some sort of like virtual presence.
yeah, and so like I guess, as was everybody, like back in March, everybody's like, oh shit, my business is gonna go under with like so much uncertainty, right? Like nobody knew it was
Yeah.
gonna happen, but like I think at least us like came out at there on this at least this far into it, like we're probably actually like better off than we were in March of or February of 2020 in terms of the business and clients and stuff like that. That's weird. But then it's also like really weird because I guess I do this stuff, but I hate not even just the stuff that I do, but like I'm violently like anti-tracking and anti and like
Oh,
super pro privacy. So like
yeah.
at times when I am in these meetings where they're talking about like the advertising, the digital advertising part of it, I'm just like, so I'm listening because I do want to like learn this stuff and like be able to try it out on like my own ventures or like my friends ventures and stuff like that, but also like in the back of my mind I'm fuming like this we shouldn't have the ability to track people this granularly, we shouldn't like. And now you have this stuff in the news like with the whole Facebook Apple controversy or battle right now with regards to privacy.
What is the controversy?
um so right now, like if you have the Facebook app on your iPhone,
Hmm.
um Facebook can track things like outside of the Facebook app. So if
Okay.
you're in Safari like looking at shoes or something, like if that if that shoe merchant has Facebook pixel tracking code on their website, it's all that information, all that stuff is being tracked and it's feeding into Facebook, and then they can do with their advertising algorithms, people can target you in all kinds of different ways and stuff. So Apple is making that it's going to have to be opt-in now. So like one day you're going to open up the Facebook app and there's going to be an Apple pop-up that says like you need to opt into this tracking. Whereas now it's just by default. If you get the Facebook app, basically
Right.
like you are going to be tracked. And so Facebook is like putting these like um one page, full page like ads in the Wall Street Journal and New York Times and stuff, like talking about how this is going to be a death knell for small businesses and shit like stuff like that. And Apple's like, nope, privacy.
No. So Apple is the champion for personal privacy.
In terms of
This
mainstream
specific issue.
tech company, yeah, in terms of mainstream tech companies right now, that they kind of are, yeah.
Okay, this is a really interesting topic, just because the balance I don't think has been found. Not that I'm prescribing a balance or know of a balance, but
Mm-hmm.
um, the thought of like individual privacy and what is privacy, because right, it's only intuitive for any sort of company or marketing company to try to get the most and diversified metrics they can,
Right.
right, that influence their selling and whatever, because every organization operates with the rational actor model, which is to revenue, increase profits, right, have more profits than expenditures, right, more profits than losses, and that's the most rational thing. So you're going to cut long-term view, like in most executives minds or whatever, you cut long-term gratification or long-term R&D or whatever in terms of short-term gain. There's a lot of like, that's why there's all sorts of mechanisms or whatever to get short-term gain and sort of things like that. So of course you would try to track everybody, and
Mm-hmm.
then that leads to the argument that yeah, these are just dispassionate data points. So they're just dispassionate data points. They inform better selling. So if you're targeted an ad, it's really something that you would want and you're looking for. So there's a benefit to it because we live in a smarter society that's
Mm-hmm.
able to uh, give us the things we want. But then the problem is that we create these fractured echo chambers that confirm all of, or there's a bias confirmation, collective bias confirmation in these fractured echo chambers. And then the fact that these algorithms can target people in such a micro way, or micro target them in such a specific way, a surgical way, and create these little echo chambers, they can exacerbate that effect and create more rifts between the chambers so that you can funnel specific type of whatever product or or things that you're selling into those little chambers, right? Isn't that
Yeah.
would it wouldn't that be the isn't that essentially the goal of this kind of thing? Like do the metrics support this theory that the data collection is really the most intuitive use of the data collection is the same thing that has kind of broken our disposition.
Yeah, and I think both things tie into just how granular things have gotten, right? Because so
So what do you mean by
20
the word granular, first of all?
okay, so I've sat
What you
in
mean
meetings.
granular?
I'll give an example. So I've sat in meetings where there have been discussions of how do we exclude Indian people from receiving these ads? How do we get a better bang for our buck on our return on our investment by not showing ads to recent arrival immigrants on Facebook? I've sat in meetings where that has been discussed and people have tried to find ways, and so then somebody says, what if we exclude people whose interests are cricket? What if we exclude people whose interests are Bollywood? Like, I've sat in those fucking meetings, man. Like,
Okay, okay, but those are also two kind of good suggestions.
but should that be an option? Like, it's just
Okay,
ugh.
should it be an option? I don't know. Because okay, like we have a bill of rights. So private businesses, even though they're private, still can't refuse service based off of any sort of discrimination, right? They can well maybe not now. I mean, I guess they can the whole whatever, but like they can't discriminate to refuse service or
Mhm.
stop service based off of like class discrimination or whatever. So would it be discrimination though to target specific people if that's like so like okay, let's talk about Return the Jewels, right? I don't
Mhm.
necessarily know the demographic for this show. I would imagine it's probably people that look exactly like me. But I have no clue. I really don't know. So
Right.
if I were to find that, if I were to like make figure out this advertising thing,
Mhm.
make targeted ads, it would be in my interest to be like, well, I want to exclude people that stormed the Capitol, because I really don't think they would jive with the kind of things that I'm saying. Or do I want to target them because they will really hate the things that I'm saying?
I don't think I would actually go with the latter,
Yeah.
because I mean, that's how, like, for the YouTube stuff, like videos that I've seen that like from channels that have millions of subscribers, like it seems like you haven't made it unless like five people are threatening to kill you in the comments.
So really, it's death threats will really give me a life
Yeah.
that I want or
Or in
don't
the
want.
developing world, rape threats. Those I've seen quite a few of those as well.
Rape threat. I don't think I've ever
Death threats
had a
and
rape
rape.
threat.
No. Well, I would say
Probably.
it's something that mostly falls to women,
Yeah.
given the dynamics of that. But yeah.
Well, I mean, it's part of okay. So that's actually another thing. It's like I think I don't know if it's like part of toxic masculinity or whatever. Where like, um, there we still love as the butt of a joke or a punchline the implication of uh, man on man rape in prison, right? So
Yeah.
anybody does something bad, or maybe they're accused of doing something bad. There's always a contingent of people reacting to the story that will be like, "Don't drop the soap," or
Yeah.
whatever. It's the implication, and no, there's the punchline. It's in the implication of rape, and it's like that's funny though because it washes out, and it's like it becomes one of those things where it's like, is that kind of trivialization in itself toxic and seeping out into our general rhetoric that makes the fact that it's like, oh yeah, a lot of like comedians are saying, oh, it's cancel culture. We can't joke about this, but it really the other side of the conversation. It's like, well, how insensitive is it And should you be criticized for being insensitive? Should you not be criticized for being insensitive? Can you not handle the criticism for being insensitive? Are you too insensitive? Are you too sensitive to handle your criticism of being insensitive? Like,
Yeah, I agree. So as
I don't
somebody
know.
that's I've certainly laughed at a lot of those kinds of jokes in the past. I've probably made them even.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, at this point, it is wrong, and I think it does completely tie into toxic masculinity. So that's one of those things I don't do. I do find though, so with a lot of these jokes, and like a lot of times when a comedian or other entertainer um ends up saying something, and then people start pushing for cancellation or that kind of thing. Do you find that like just a lot of the time the jokes in question or like the statements in question are just like lazy and not funny? Like they're just
Yeah.
not even good jokes. Like at this
Yeah.
point, like when
Usually.
Chris Rock was making prison man sex jokes in like 94 or 95, that was kind of hilarious. But now in 2020, every other comedian makes the same fucking jokes. And it's just like, it's just kind of a lazy joke at this point. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would agree. Like, I mean, um, I there's that whole aspect of, and there's okay, so even talking about comedians, but even entertainers, right, or influencers, right? There's that whole aspect of like, but I can get away with saying the N word. I am justified in doing it, right? I can get away with saying a rape joke. I am justified in doing it. My point of view is so unique, and my words are so important that I can do this insensitive thing and get away with it. It doesn't matter that I'll trivialize other people's experiences because I haven't experienced it myself. Shit, I've had wounds, physical wounds, so I'm sure it's the same as an emotional wound. You know what I mean? So
Mm,
I can get away with like there's always that sense it's like because you're saying I can't get away with it, you are limiting my free speech, and that is just PC culture, cancel culture. Uh, because PC stands for people cancel, and that's PC cancel culture, and the C in the PC stands for cuck and cancel, and it's a cancel culture, and I'm being canceled because I can't say this thing. But really, is it like I can't really think of a good reason why I should say this thing?
mm,
I mean, how is that never
yeah.
part of the conversation? Is it like we're not allowed to say that part of the conversation?
Funny tidbit I just saw this morning. Did you see that thing about that country singer who
Yeah,
was like on
yeah,
camera?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but apparently, like,
Gowan, something Morgan.
I couldn't even tell you,
I don't
but
know
like, so apparently he lost a bunch of deals and got suspended from a bunch of deals, and then
because he was
his
on tape saying
streams
the
are
N
way
word.
down. But his sales are way up.
Yeah, his sales are way up because
Isn't
he got
that
his
something?
support. Because now he reminds his singers of themselves.
Mhm.
Oh, look, that
That's
guy's
wild.
authentically like us. He wasn't just cosplaying. He says the N word all the time. He's not one of those liberal elites who's sensitive to people's feelings. He
I
says
guess
the N
they're
word just like us in close. He says the N word behind closed doors just like us all the time. Look at him casually dehumanizing races. That's just like we do. Now
what's
let's
that
go eat our
phrase?
lizard food.
What's that phrase? Is it like voting with your wallet, or there's something like that, right? Or
Or
like
vote with your wallets,
vote
not
what
with
with your.
your
So I
vote with
guess
your
that's
wallet,
what
not with
like
your heart, or something.
uh, I don't know. But
Oh.
so I guess I don't know. Maybe a big subset of the population is like watching him get canceled, and they're like, "No, we're gonna go to Walmart and buy up all of his CDs and support him." I don't know.
Did you see that thing about how naked mole rats are racist and xenophobic? There's all these different specific geographic regions of naked mole rats, and they're like xenophobic and racist towards other naked mole rats.
Are you serious? No, I have
Yeah,
not seen this.
no, like for real.
Wow.
That's a whole thing, and it's like they all have white skin. No, I'm just, I shouldn't have said
Wow.
that. That's fucked up. That's fucked up. No, no, but
Oh.
like, no, no. I'm not. I just that was a fucked up thing to say. But what I meant to say was all naked romance, romance, all naked mole rats look like my friend Brian's grandmother. No, that's fucked up. That was fucked up. I don't even have a friend named Brian. But
Wait.
I'm sure there's a naked mole rat somewhere that looks like someone's grandmother and triggers some sort of nostalgic story to people. But yeah, naked mole rats are racist, and I don't know where I was going with that. I was really
I
just trying to make the white skin joke, and like I realized how like messed up it was. But you know, we haven't really even gotten into the whole thing, and maybe I should cut that out.
but it's
Mhm.
it's kind of funny that like every aspect of that was completely believable though, even the punchline.
Oh no, I didn't make up the naked mole rat thing.
No,
It's
I
totally
know,
racist. Yeah.
but like no part of me was like he's bullshitting. Like even with the punchline, right? Like
Yeah. No, it's a little fucked up. Oh man. Okay, so let's talk about code switching. Speaking of naked mole rats and being racist and whatever, let's talk about code switching. So we were kind of talking about this yesterday in our personal conversation that's not going to be published. Uh, but code switching is something that comes naturally to me or to you. My code switching is when I'm around my parents or cousins or whoever. I actually speak a different way. Maybe how I'm speaking right now to you. I don't really know, but all I know is that I was aware of it when a friend from the outside or like school or whatever when I was a kid was hearing me on the phone with my parents and was like, "Hey, you talk kind of Indian. I didn't know you speak like that." And I've actually never been aware of it, but I code switch back and forth. Now, for you, I'm sure it's slightly different in that, well, you came here like 4 or 5, so you already speak a certain kind of way, and
hmm
so you have to adapt to the American accent. Not that I'm saying you haven't adapted. I think you've adapted very well, but you adapt to the American accent, so the code that you're switching to is different.
yeah,
Is
and
it
so
an
so I
active
mean,
thing?
what?
Is it an active thing?
I think at this point, no.
No.
I think like it was probably the first couple of years,
Yeah.
but now it's yeah, it's completely natural. And so I think mine is similar to yours. So like I've gotten the same thing. Like if I'm talking to my parents on the phone around or, like American friends, they're like, "Oh, bro, you're talking Indian real hard there." Like I've certainly gotten those comments, but it's also just like accents in general for me, right? So like if I talk to my parents, I'll talk in a normal Indian English accent. But what's interesting, or what I've realized, is that I kind of do it with everybody. So like if I'm talking to like a recent Chinese immigrant and like they don't have an American accent, right?
Hmm.
So I will revert back to my normal, sort of more neutral Indian English accent, and it goes like that. So my thing is basically it just kicks in and out based on whom I'm talking to, and so I go back into the Indian thing, talking to anybody without an American accent, basically.
Okay, so maybe this is how we illuminate the difference I'm trying to get at, right?
Mm.
Or the distinction I'm trying to get to. Not necessarily the distinction between you and me, but a distinction that exists in the realm of code switching. You, let's say you're talking to another immigrant, a new immigrant, right? So you kind of revert back into that mode of speaking that's kind of like English, slower words
hmm
pronounced with a little bit of an ethnic twang on them. You revert back into that to be palatable. Not necessarily palatable, maybe to be comforting, right? To be comforting, to be understood, to be deliberate, to be precise.
hmm
Now, a white dude speaking like, you know, trying to do like a different ethnicity's affect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what if a white dude came to us and tried to speak kind of in an Indian accent? Would
Right.
that Do you think that would be with the intention to be comforting and palatable, or do you think it'd be like? I mean, not necessarily. I'm sure it's case by case, right? But let's say you get that right. So how is that perceived? Is that perceived? I would perceive it as patronizing, but like,
It it, I get annoyed by it a little bit. But,
yeah,
so I've seen like even in my family, like when like aunts and cousins and stuff have married American guys and or American people, like their American spouses. So I don't know. I mean, it could easily be that they just like hanging out with Indians, like picked up certain things, but they will say certain words with like a very hard like Simpsons esque like accent, like that kind of kicks in at times.
oh, they're doing Hank Azaria doing Peter Sellers.
Yeah, but so and the way that the nuance is that like so it won't be like they won't say like a whole sentence, right? But like the final word in the sentence will have like a namas sort of Indian like punctuation, kind of like just that the way they say that last word, and so like yeah, when I'm there, it annoys me. I don't know their intentions, and I'm sure they're not bad,
Yeah, they
but
probably aren't bad. They probably aren't bad intentions. I wonder if it's subconscious. It might be.
that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, they are like hanging out with my relative, like my aunt, like so if I give an example of like my aunt who's Indian and then uncle who's American, like I mean he is like hanging out with my aunt like all day and all the whole time. So I mean it's natural that maybe he would just randomly pick up some things, or maybe they're doing it out of their own insecurity, like to kind of fit in when they're like
Mhm.
the one white person around like a whole, it's some sort of like big family event where there's like 45 Indians and there's like this one white person there.
That's intimidating for me as a not
Yeah.
as a brown guy.
So I mean, it annoys. I
Well,
don't
it's
get
not
it.
intimidating. It's more annoying than intimidating.
Yeah. So because of like the uncertainty, like thinking about all that, like it's not something I get angry about or anything like that. But I do, and I don't want to be annoyed by it. Like sometimes I'm like,
Yeah,
why am I so annoyed by this? But I do
but
get
you
it.
don't get annoyed when they call you Madhav.
No, I don't actually. You're right. I
Oh man,
absolutely don't.
I was kind of hoping that'd be like a gotcha.
Yeah, I think I was.
No, another thing about the code switching stuff. So I think there's another aspect of it, right? Getting called Madhav, shit like that, right? Getting
Hmm.
otherized. Oh man, you smell like curry, or whatever. I'm sure. We've heard all of it, right?
Hmm.
All of that. I'm sure there's an aspect of it where it's like I have to speak with a particular cadence to be perceived in a particular way. And this is probably as a young person how I will develop my self defense mechanisms, right? My adaptation mechanisms. For me specifically, growing up, fat dude, all that stuff, right? Well, I saw studies was recently, and I actually talked about this on episode 16, I think, with Ramon
Hmm.
about how when you're like brown and a little overweight, or you're Asian and overweight in America, you actually are seen as more amenable, and people see you with less. The xenophobic filter is turned down a little bit, and how as terms of how you're perceived, because you're so that coupled with my maybe subconscious, maybe conscious switch. I know it was definitely conscious, maybe around like eighth, ninth grade, where I kind of talked with a little bit of a surfer accent, more California accent, drawing out things. For one, to hide the Mississippi drawl,
Hmm.
and to kind of imply that I'm more worldly, and that this is my way of preemptively trying to preserve or capture the benefit of the doubt I can potentially receive growing up. I'm going to shred that benefit of the doubt with my southern accent. I'll potentially gain that benefit of the doubt by having that like wavy, wavy kind of drawled out California-ish accent. And what really ended up happening was I ended up having more of a Pacific Northwest accent, which is adopted from a lot of TV media consumption, sitcoms, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what was yours growing
Well,
up, small kid? What is the accent you, this little brown kid, has to emulate to try to adapt and fit in?
uh, so for me, I think it was just sort of generic American. I don't think, uh, for the
What is
most
that
part.
media like sitcoms?
Yeah.
The
So
show
like,
Friends.
I get in New Orleans, you most, I'd say most of the people I'm around have a pretty neutral American accent, but then it is the South, so you do get people who have kind of the drawl and,
Hmm.
kind of more the stuff you see on TV. But so it was neutral. I would say it's interesting when you're in like those kinds of spaces as a kid, or white spaces. I mean, even in adulthood, but there's like this list, right? So there's like, here's a list of all the things that make me different, that make me the other, right? All right, I'm fat, I'm brown, um, talk a different way. For me, in some of those white spaces, it was like, what also made me different was that I took a lot of my cues and things from black culture and hip hop culture.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and so there's probably like a dozen other things, right? So there's like all these things that make me different from, like, let's just say in like elementary school and stuff, like the rich white kids that I was around. Um, and so I think I and other people like want to minimize that, right? So like certain things there you can't change, right? I'm brown, I'm fat. I mean, you can change that, but like not in that sense.
Yeah.
But so just crossing like language out of that list, like language and accent. So like, all right, for this thing, they can't say that I'm different for this, right? They can't say I'm different with language and accent and stuff like that. Um, so it's just one thing in like efforts of kind of assimilation, right?
And really the drive for assimilation isn't so much a negative conditioning. It's like it's not like, oh, if I don't assimilate, I'm gonna be shunned.
Mm-hmm.
It's if I don't assimilate, I don't get to experience,
Right.
you know? Because I mean people are generally like not I don't want to say welcoming, but people will generally like leave you alone. And so it's like, yeah, how do I access these spaces? Because I do want to live a normal life and get to experience. I don't necessarily want to be the side character, you know?
Is that
Oh,
generational, do you think? So like, our parents, when they came here, they probably maybe were afraid of being shunned.
I mean,
Whereas for us,
I think with our parents, I mean, maybe I'm simplifying it so much, but like, I don't know if it was so much a social issue as it was so much a survival issue, right?
that's true.
It's
Yeah.
like I need to come into this country and build. Who gives a shit what they think about me? As long as it doesn't affect my bottom line, I got to raise these kids here. I got to make rent. I
But
don't.
shunning, especially in the business world, shunning could involve that though, right? Like, what
Yeah,
if everybody decided like, oh, we're not going to go to the Indian-owned store, we're not going to
yeah,
patronize this Indian business, or we're going to go like America first or whatever, right?
yeah.
I think it kind of does tie. I see what you're saying, but I think it can tie in.
I'm not. I mean,
You
I
know?
think it absolutely does tie in. Like, I mean, it's a whole thing. Like when you think about your parents and, well, the kind of surely there's all sorts of crap that they had to deal with. That we really well we could probably deal with, but we're lucky we don't have to, or we
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily have to at that frequency. But I feel like with the older generation, not just South Asian immigrant generation, but the older generation of like Asian immigrants, other whatever, they're I think there's more of a tendency to self-segregate, right? Like, how many of our parents really are like really social animals in practice? You know, like I'm not talking about online. I'm talking about like how many of them have really built lives with long-lasting social relationships that are outside the extended family,
Mm.
and how big are those networks really of close, long-lasting social network relationships, not business relationships, not
Yeah.
acquaintances.
I think there's kind of a big contrast, like in my upbringing that way,
Hmm.
um, as compared to most other, Indian Americans that I know. And so I think, though I have noticed, like, my mom and my parents as a whole probably have like more white and black friends than close friends than like pretty much anybody else that I know, even like my own relatives and stuff. And I think
Yeah,
a lot of that is just like, so I know that you have like a big extended family
yeah,
in Mississippi or in the Jackson area and stuff like that. But we didn't have that like at all. Like we were just kind of here, and so I think they were forced to like, all right, unless we're just gonna sit in our house all the time. And there is an okay Indian-sized Indian community here. I don't
yeah.
think it's as big as Jackson's. I never got the feeling that it was as big as Jackson's, actually.
It might not be. I don't know.
But well, plus, don't you guys have like four Indian stores in Jackson? Or like,
Oh,
well, like
yeah,
the
something like.
Indian
Or I
goods
mean,
and
there
stuff.
used to, yeah, 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 Indian restaurants and stores. There used to be like a not a decent amount.
Y'all
I
definitely
remember when
have
there used to be
more.
only two.
Yeah, but y'all definitely have more than we do. Both the restaurants and although now we have the new thing of like of the white guys that go to India for a summer and backpack and come back and open up restaurants. With full respect, we're doing this out of love and respect. So I don't want to make too much fun of it without actually going there and seeing the extent of how ridiculous stuff is. But we do have a lot of that in New Orleans now. But what were we talking
Sometimes I
about?
feel like you and I should just like go to Ireland, learn how they boil potatoes. We'll come back. We'll open a spot here in Brooklyn and be like real Irish boiled potatoes
We have to
without
start it off
salt.
as a food truck. The progression I've seen, we started off as a food truck, and then we just crush it, and then we get our own store.
Real, real boiled
Boiled
potatoes
potatoes,
with the
right?
skin on and not sanitized because it's and no salt, no spice. And we'll be like, this is just authentic.
But
But I bet
we shouldn't do
potatoes were
Irish
probably
though.
appropriated anyways.
Well, but I think it would be fair if we did like British straight up.
Oh, that'd be
Like,
funny.
what if we like yeah? What if we
What's the natural British?
culinarily
Uh,
colonized British shit? I don't know. Fuck.
what is the natural? Who? I guess who's the
They could do the
indigenous
shepherd's pie and all that stuff.
population? Who's the
Hmm?
indigenous population? I guess before like the Anglo Saxons and all. Was there one?
Uh, I don't know.
Oh damn! Maybe the Anglo Saxons were the best colonizers and were able to wipe out a whole history of indigenous people. What if the
Huh?
whole Great British continent and I, yeah, like by the way, I mentioned earlier in this interview, our research was better in season three. But like, what if there's a whole continent of indigenous brown people that just were wiped out and they have no history of it, and then like it just became the Great British Empire and the Anglo Saxons and all took over and all, or maybe I don't know. No, maybe
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe they're. I don't think I'm getting it right. I think
no.
I think I could just watch like Braveheart, and that's like that'll give me the no. I don't
But
know.
correct me if I'm wrong. We don't have anything to really be mad at the Irish or the Scots about, right? Like we have to focus
No,
our.
probably
You know
not.
what I
No, I mean
mean?
I'm not talking about like it's not even a hate thing. It's not even a mad being mad thing. It's just like what would sell?
Mm,
There's an inherent disproportionate disadvantage or a handicap where I feel like, you know, and maybe it'd be different for us in the other side of the world, but like I feel like white dudes, white women can take a concept, any sort of cultural ethnic concept,
mm-hmm.
and study it for a little bit, or not even have to study it, but just traffic in a confident way that they are experts or can use it and make a lot of money, get a lot of success. And there's nothing to
Yeah.
hate about that because that's literally, uh, you know, American entrepreneurship, ingenuity. So, like, why? What are the aspects or the openings in which we can go in and flip it? I mean, I talked to Nimesh on that on what episode 14 about like, what if he opened a school in India that taught potential teachers of yoga,
Mm.
because it's not like anybody's gonna double check if the yoga is authentic. He could just make up moves and chants. It's not like they're gonna check if it's real Sanskrit or
What was that movie that
Kumare.
got people?
Kumare,
Yeah, that
yeah.
was good, man. I
Yeah, the
love
guy
that movie.
literally did that. The only
Mm.
mistake in that movie was he gave up the game at the end. Like
Didn't he
he
like
told
feel
them.
bad, sort of, or like
Yeah,
they
he,
they,
he
they
started to
pointed
feel
to it, and he
bad.
just like,
He started
yeah.
to feel bad, I think, because of how easy it was.
Mm.
And he was just like, and I'm sure he started to realize, oh my God, there's so many religious con men that profit in this way. So it's like, we can hate, you can hate, white women for stealing yoga or whatever, but then also there's like some Baba in India that's manipulating a lot of white women into having sex with him
Did you
because it's
see?
the movement, that so it's like, where's the balance there? The yoga is their retribution, I guess, for Sai Baba.
Did you? So
Is
there
it
was a
Sai Baba? Should I
case,
not have said Sai Baba? Was it a different Baba?
huh?
It was a different Baba, right? Not Sai Baba. It's probably Sai Baba.
Sai Baba was a complicated one because there's two. There's the old Sai Baba, and then there's the one that died a few years ago.
Who's the
But
guy that had his dick cut off because he was like that was his apology?
oh, I don't know. I don't know that one at all.
It was a whole okay. But maybe that's the theory we posit here on season 2 of Return the Jewels before we get all our research ready for season 3. But season 2 is that maybe the Babas, the Indian Babas and whatever, are they're the counterbalance to appropriation, right? If white women can take yoga and make multi-million-dollar industries out of it,
Mm.
without it needing to be like really uh, peer reviewed, authentically checked or whatever, or checked for authenticity or whatever, then maybe the balance of it is just because there's no scrutiny that all these babas manipulate all these white women into doing that kind of thing
Yeah,
anyways.
but then see that's complicated because for every like one Baba that's kind of preying on white women, there are like 10 domestic Indian Babas that are preying on Indian people.
Yeah.
Same exact ways. And you ever seen that MSG shit? There's this dude, he was like a Punjabi Baba, and he did the thing where he had his compound and he had like a fake Disney World and shit. It was real intense on his compound. But he was like, yeah, he was like raping a bunch of women. There were a couple of murders and like he buried the people like underneath his compound and shit like that. But the thing about him though, he was like he like fancied himself like a Bollywood star. So he would put out these movies and it would be him like all bobbed out, like going in this motorcycle like a hero and shit. Like just put it in YouTube, man. Like it was I don't remember what his name was, but his movie was like MSG, Messenger of God, and you're just gonna see like a Baba with like the thumbnail of the YouTube video is gonna be like a Baba doing like wheelies on a fucking motorcycle and shit. It's like real wild. But that was like I remember,
Who are these people?
but that was a domestic Baba, right? Like all of his money and all of his, he
Yeah.
was preying only
And I
on
mean,
local.
okay, there's like a huge, for as much as in this country, in America, there's like, the millennial generation, whatever, believing in astrology and horoscopes and all that stuff. It's such a predatory and giant industry
Mm-hmm.
in the other side of the world, right?
Right.
Like the Vedic or whatever astrology,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and all of that stuff. And it's like you got all these people who maybe they have these divine gifts, but they get propped up by every network, every like there's no regulation on the things that they can say and the miracles that they can claim, and people just buy into it. Imagine if there was a whole giant industry of Miss Cleos
Right.
that every one of your uncles and aunts believed in wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and then in India it gets scarier though because um like politicians, like they will basically like these babas will have like political patrons, right? So like somebody's standing for election, they'll go to get the blessings of the baba before the election, right? And they will leave like a 20 lakh donation, right? And
Well,
then
yeah, I
like
mean that's just like mega churches here
yeah, and
endorsing
then when the
Republican political candidates.
and then when there are allegations of like the baba raping somebody or murdering somebody, the politicians will be like, yeah, let's just keep this quiet. And I mean, they yeah,
Yeah,
complicated.
no, I mean, and there's a corruption everywhere. We always just have to be. You have to be careful not to fall into the realm of whataboutism, right? When we're talking about corruption in a specific place, to be like, well, what about the corruption here? Because then those kind of arguments aren't really arguments; they're cyclical because there's no direct clash. So if there's no direct clash, there's no like Hegelian whatever. So what you do is you draw attention to all of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, one thing before we talk about the farmers' protest, and this is probably a good segue with the corruption and government looking the other way, and the influence of religion and politics and manufactured religion and all of that stuff, not necessarily whatever um, private practice of religion. But let's do a segment. So, you're aware of this segment. It is called
Appropriation or Appreciation.
Now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share the screen and I'm going to play a video for you for a minute. Let me do that.
All right. Dope story cycle. You and Daravi. Enemies, dogs, enemy troops. Yeah, check this out. தூக்கம் கலந்த பின்னும் தெரிவதெல்லாம் கெட்ட கனவு காசு பணம் இல்லாட்டி இங்க இல்ல நல்ல உறவு காசுதான் எல்லாம் என்றால் திறமைக்கு இல்ல மதிப்பு நல்லோருக்கு காலம் இல்ல இங்க கெட்டவனுக்கு பரிசு ஆனாலும் இந்த பயணம் தொடங்கும் இது தோல்வி அடைஞ்சவனின் புதிய தொடக்கம் என் காலடி சத்தம் கூட எல்லா திசையில் ஒழிக்கும் என்னை குண்டில் அடைச்சால் கூட என் சிந்தனை எங்கேயும் பறக்கும் புதிய புரட்சி படைத்து முடிக்கும் புயலை போல கதவை உடைக்கும் பெரிய புகழை தூக்கி நிறுத்தும் பழைய காலத்தை மாற்றி படைக்கும் என் உயிர் இருக்கும் இறுதி வரைக்கும் என் கவிதை ராகத்தில் கலந்து இருக்கும் நான்
Okay, so yeah. So basically, I just wanted to give you a sense of that. I thought he was going to rap in English, to be honest with you. But that is, I don't know if that's called gully rap, but those are, well, I mean, you saw what it is. You want to
Mm-hmm.
speak on it?
Looking at appropriation or appreciation.
Appropriation. Okay, yeah. So
Okay.
what they're doing. Obviously, it was hip hop. That was a rap cipher, and it was a whole thing. It wasn't in English, but these guys are rappers in India. This was in
Mm-hmm.
Bombay, and this was, I guess, they're not a battle, but more like just cipher practice, all that stuff, and just like one of those XXL ciphers or whatever. that we have here. But is this appropriation of hip hop culture, or is it appreciation? Is it its own thing?
I would probably veer on this side of appreciation. I'll tell you why. So when you see these guys, or I mean, completely subjective here, but when I see these guys, like the dude that was rapping, like I see like 10 p.m. his parents coming in and be like, "All right, go to sleep," and he's under the covers with his fucking Reliance Geo cell phone with a 2 GB plan, like up till 5 in the morning, finishing all of his fucking data, watching YouTube videos of like the fucking legends of rap, right? And like all of a sudden it's 5 a.m. He hasn't slept. He's out of data for the month, man, and he's just been up all night, like just studying. And so I think like dudes like that's out of love and appreciation. Like I think what they're doing for the most part, and like I think because like I was that kid sort of
Yeah,
when I was like a teenager, right? And like I think when you do when you are into something like that, when there's that much love there, like you've studied so much, you know so much about it that you're not gonna do things in a disrespectful way.
yeah. And yeah, let me speak to that. Madhav was the first person I ever met that actually made music, made beats, and he had these wild stories when we were 18-year-olds. Like we're in downtown Jackson, Mississippi, and he would always like go to these clubs and sell his beats, or random perchance people buying his beats and stuff. And so this was wild back in the Casa Morpheus LimeWire days, before a lot of computer tools and stuff. So Madhav was on that stuff back then. But sorry, yeah, continue. It comes from an appreciation for the art form, because I mean the guy wasn't rapping in English. He was speaking very bad
Mhm.
English to introduce himself, which is great. I mean, whatever. But like he was rapping in his language, and he was hitting the melodies or whatever. Maybe I don't know. Maybe he wasn't on beat. I don't know these things. But
And then well another thing with that is that like in terms of Indian rap, so you have a lot of guys like this guy. I think his name was well, his real name was Tony Sebastian. I didn't catch the AKA, but you have a lot of guys like that. And on the flip side, you have so okay, take a guy like that where he's probably watching YouTube videos of like Rakim and I don't know, like just legends in the game, man, like 80s, 90s music. And then on the flip side though, you take some of the sort of more mainstream rappers in India. You have like Yo-Yo Honey Singh and Badshah and these cats, right? And they're taking their cues from fucking Pitbull, dude. Like
yeah,
Yo-Yo Honey Singh is straight up an Indian coked out Pitbull. Like
yeah.
so if you look at it like that, like one is probably very clear appreciation and one is very clear appropriation, looking at those two examples. And but I do think hip hop is just so complex with it that like ultimately almost if you were not black in hip hop, I think there is just some level of appropriation
Yeah.
ultimately at the end of the day. But I think there are degrees to it, and what these guys are doing is much more is just much better than a lot of the other
So
examples out there.
another thing, so kind of, and now maybe this is a whole stretch, but let me do the transition, then we'll get into the topic. But is this transition a stretch? So like hip hop historically, I don't have the literature and the research on this. Hip hop in America, the whole thing is like a civil rights movement, everything. It empowers voices. There's a whole, there's a whole thing like fight the power, all this stuff. It's about, the individual, self empowerment, the American dream. It's its own, hip hop has become its own culture and all of that stuff. But, it's a way to get across heavy messages to the masses about, like protest, all of this stuff, breaking down arguments and stuff. So we look at something like this in India, it's blowing up. This gully rap stuff, gully boy, all that, that's it's becoming big. Sure, there's appropriation of the Western culture, and that's part of it. But like, that's the thing that's the most commoditized, 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 and trafficked in thing is the American culture, consumer media culture, and like, yeah, sure, gully rap is going to become a thing, but then on the other hand, you have things like the rise of fascism or whatever, and you have things like the farmers' protests going on in India. So farmers' protests, we talked about it right at the beginning of this episode, but like, you know, I think it's the biggest protest in history, biggest protest in existence in history.
Mm.
And farmers, all sorts of rural farmers, and everyone, and a lot of people are joining them, came into Delhi, and they stormed the Red Fort, and they met with a lot of like tear gas and all sorts of police brutality, and the internet was cut off and all sorts of things. Same things the government did to like Kashmir is doing, did to like Delhi, this big metropolitan center, the capital, right, and all of that. But there is power in art and self-expression, right? So
Mm.
art in India is well, self-expression art. This is emerging as a form of that. So do you think stuff like this, if it's appreciative of this thing it's appropriating, can it really be used? Like, can it be used? Can these kids empower movements through their words and through their appreciation of hip hop and use of hip hop,
I
right?
think it could. It could, and I think there are a number of really interesting parallels if you look at things a certain way. So, like, all right, we're talking about. So let's go to the gully rap, right?
Hmm.
So gully rap right now, it, it's kind of developing, right? Like you first started seeing that kind of things like, I don't know what, 4 or 5 years ago, and
Yeah.
it's sort of getting bigger and bigger and more people in it. Um, so go back to in America when hip hop was here was in that stage, right? So we go back to basically the 80s as a whole when that kind of early development was happening in hip hop, and think about what was happening here during that time. Yeah, the Reagan era,
Yeah.
followed by the last couple of years of Bush Senior. Um, you had a mysterious illness or disease or pandemic, some would say, with the AIDS crisis happening.
Right.
You had
Which
all
White
kinds of
America learned about through Tom Hanks.
yeah. You had hell, look at some other parallels. So you had crack era right here, and then go into India and like the last 10 or 15 years, actually with the farming communities in particular, there's been a huge drug problem
Hmm.
um out there.
Like our opioid crisis. Well, our
Right.
crack right. Well,
The
our
same, well, yeah, because
yeah,
it's like, well, they're
in the 80s. Yeah.
but like there, I think it is like straight up opium and stuff like that that the like the younger generations of farmers and stuff are getting into and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and then you have this kind of like, so Reagan somewhat like he introduced fascism. Trump kind of like perfect, almost like took it to another level. But like going back, like Showtime had a recent thing, a series like the Reagans, and I watched that one night and I was like, holy shit! Like he was like he intro all the shit that Trump did, like Reagan kind of did it light at
Fireside
first.
chats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was just so many parallels with that. But anyway, like going back to the point that we were trying to discuss here, yeah, it's just crazy. Like just looking the 80s when India or when hip hop developed here, and compare that to like now hip hop developing, like a lot of these conditions are very similar. And and so I think it could. I don't. You saw that White Tiger movie, right?
Yeah. White Tiger. That's on Netflix. About people are comparing it to Parasite.
Oh,
But
really? I have not. I didn't.
I
Okay.
won't comment on White Tiger other than um wow, what a reliable narrator.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, so the
I
reason.
love my narrators whenever they are there to be reliable and very dependable because that's what makes a good story, or that's what makes a good. Okay, that's it. That's it. I'm not. No
Yeah.
more. You
I
could talk
brought it
about
up.
it. You could talk about it.
Just uh any like parallels one tries to find are just so much more complex when you're doing it with when you have India on one end just because of like class stuff.
Hmm.
Like so like I'm sure a lot of like American people who watched White Tiger, like I don't know, that was probably like their first glance at certain class issues. Like and I feel like right, so okay, in like the 2 weeks that maybe in seventh grade history, world history class, when people read about India, there's oh, there's a caste system, and it just like so you get like two paragraphs of information about that, and some of which are, and it's just so much more complex than two paragraphs can ever
Hmm.
like summarize things. But then with White Tiger, I don't know, you like probably see it, and I think you get well. So you've gotten like glimpses of it, I think, with other like big mainstream movies like Slumdog Millionaire and stuff. I think this might be, I don't know, this might be like some of the clearest examples of kind of the way things are or can be there. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, I mean, kind of also like the the situation being so grim that it exacerbates an already existing self-defeatist mindset, and then just illuminating that more things like Parasite shows that, this shows that, different things like this had the metaphor about the rooster coop, or
Mm.
like different things like that, right? With the mindset, it's like, and then him adding in those like flares of or the pros or whatever, talking about subservience and all that, you know.
I like how well the book and then the movie was it was set in this period of time where India was in at the peak of its embrace of capitalism.
Yeah.
And so you started getting these narratives, like I would get it from relatives and stuff, like essentially not quite to the level, but like almost like, oh God, there's so few poor people now. There's so few people who are, mistreated and stuff. Dude, everybody's on the rise, everybody's up. This huge middle class, which is true. The middle class did
I swear they were
get bigger.
hiding gold in their slums.
Right.
They're lying to you.
But I did enjoy that it was set during that time where so it was like so at that point India tourism had a big PR push, and like a slogan was India shining, right? So like all the at Indian parties and stuff, like everybody, oh man, India is really shining right now, man. Like, dude, everybody's working. All the poorest people are working in call centers and answering
Um,
phones for Dell. Everybody's just they're doing so wonderfully now with capitalism and shit. It's like, nope,
that's how I
not
feel
really.
whenever I visit friends in small towns in the south, small rural towns. They're
Mm.
always like, they're always like, man, yo, you haven't been here in 5 years, but let me tell you, X town is on the up and up, bro. We are on the up and up. We got a new $17 milkshake place in the new district that they repurposed. We're on the up and up.
Right.
But it's like, what do you mean by? Well, it's like, oh, okay, gentrification, right? So what does that do with the population that was there in the district you repurposed? you're
Mm.
not really on the up and up. You're just shifting things around. And
Right.
and yeah, no, that mentality, object impermanence, but it's like it's not object, it's subject impermanence because it's people just being pushed out of your view. So then you don't even think about them, and that fuels class division, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But you bring awareness. So farmers protest, things like that. You've got a populist prime minister and all this stuff who traffics in personal narratives and the cult of personality. Sure, maybe you can debate that. Sure, whatever. But that's an element of it. And we've got these laws that are passed extreme and written in such a way that they sound like they benefit the individual. Kind of like a Republican administration being like, well, these are tax cuts. But really, they're tax subsidies for people, that can enable government officials to embezzle money or
Mm.
whatever. But what these laws do is they use the fantasy or the rugged dream, the entrepreneurial dream that individual farmers may have to get rich by saying these will free you up and eliminate all the ceilings to what you may be
Mm.
able to achieve from your farm. But what it really does is eliminates all the floors, the regulatory floors from which that ensures farmers have well, maybe not necessarily a sustainable life, but the best attempt at a sustainable life and chance to thrive, right? So
Yeah.
just because there's no regulation now, private companies or whatever can hoard goods, and they can basically use all their tactics, collective bargaining, to undercut farmers, right? They could probably just buy their farms outright and churn them out and make their own things, right? They don't.
Yeah, it opens up the field for just complete economic manipulation
Mhm.
on from the part of big business. Um, so yeah, okay. From one standpoint, all right, 2020, the government said that my wheat was gonna be 50 rupees a kilo. That was the floor, right? Now I'm free to sell it for 100 rupees a kilo, but I'm gonna go to Ambani and he's gonna be like, nope, I'll give you 12 rupees a kilo. Like how does it brings in all this like complicated shit. I mean, it just adds in a lot of room for abuse.
And I mean, the thing is that with a government, or with actually not, I don't want to say government, with with the way things are, the way we process information, the way we vote, and the way we pick our representation. Not necessarily Americans, not necessarily Indians, but the way we do this stuff is we need to have a narrative. We need to have a simple narrative, right? So the narrative that allows for market manipulation of all these farmers' work and goods and livelihoods, and mass aggregation of it and hoarding of it and all this stuff. The mechanisms for that can be coupled with this great narrative of free market capitalism being great. Oh, well, this is the free market, right? But
Your
really,
destiny
it's
is in
like,
your own hands now, right?
right, is it a free market if the regulations are in favor of those that are the market makers, right? Like,
Mm.
essentially, these big industries would be market makers. Oh, if I don't have to pay that minimum 50 rupees a kilo for wheat, I can just say that I'm going to pay 12 for wheat. Or you know what? I'm just going to buy all the wheat now and put it in a warehouse, and then I'm just going to control the supply of wheat. I paid 50 rupees a kilo for all the wheat in the country. There's no limit to how much wheat I can buy as a single company. And you know what? I don't have to pay for it. I'm just gonna go to all these farms and be like, I'll pay you 3 rupees a kilo, but I'll buy all your wheat. And then you know what? these farmers next year, they don't have to make wheat because I'll have the wheat. I'll control the distribution of all the wheat, my company. So I don't need wheat next year. You guys figure it out next year. But I'll need wheat in 3 years. I'll probably be running out. So maybe have your shit together in 3 years. Make me the same amount of wheat. I'll give you 4 rupees a kilo, maybe. But I think the price will probably be down to like two, just
Mm.
FYI. But yeah, I mean, it opens up the market to this kind of stuff, and obviously there's I'm sure there's levels of nefariousness there. It's the biggest protest in existence. They're literally burning effigies of Rihanna, Meena Harris, all this stuff for bringing attention to the issue. And it's so mixed in with this tribalist, nationalist mindset. It's like ask any one of your brown uncles about Modi, and they'll be like, "Oh my God, he used to sell chai on the train platform, and now he's prime minister. Can you believe? One day I can be prime minister, even though I am a proctologist in Alabama. But one day he's just like me because he sold chai on a train."
The right wingers are so funny about it though. Like, all right, so when that whole thing happened with Rihanna, Greta Thunberg, and then Meena Harris, so all of a sudden they're like, outsiders should not talk about internal national issues like that. Um, and so, but then it's like the way that things are right now. So it's like, okay, so outsiders shouldn't talk about it, right? But then, like, if a Muslim person talks about it, they're like, oh, you Pakistani shouldn't talk about it, right? That if it's just, but it's like this whole thing here, like, so who's a real American, right? It's these
Mhm.
patriots that stormed the Capitol, right? And it's like similar there, like who's a real Indian who's qualified to speak on these issues.
Right.
It's it's us,
Yeah, over here it's like hey, this country is so great. If you don't like it, get out of here. But you know what? I'm gonna make the country great again because I don't really like it. It's the logic.
But
It's a nice circle.
yeah, I gotta
Or-
get a nice big old Rihanna poster for my wall back here. I think that'd look
yeah,
good in the back. That'd
man.
be awesome.
No, kudos to Rihanna. Like, and she didn't even, it's not like she was even saying, oh, well, these laws allow for the manipulation of prices and all.
They,
She was just
yeah,
like,
she didn't
yo,
even.
why is no one talking about this? This is a giant protest and they're brutalizing people. Why is no one talking about this?
She didn't even say "I stand with the farmers" or
She didn't
anything
even,
like that, right? All she did was
she probably, yeah, she could have been doing it as like, yo, is this like, should I like invest in Indian wheat now?
do you follow or pay attention to um that actress, the Indian actress Kangana Ranaut?
No, I have no idea.
She is sort of like
Who's she in?
uh the best movie my favorite movie of hers was called Queen. She's been in a bunch. But anyway, she's like a crazy right winger. She's like
Oh, is she the
earlier.
one who called Rihanna a porn singer?
Yeah.
That's so
So
funny.
all of that, and then she was like, "You're just doing all this for money," and then you like type into Google like Kangana Ranaut net worth, and it's like 13 million. Rihanna net worth like 1.2 billion. It's like,
So funny.
yeah, just doing it for money, right? Like,
No, Rihanna speaking on it uh is like a liability to her money. No, I mentioned it at the beginning of this interview, but yeah, this comedian, she's really funny. Zuby, and I think I'll add that TikTok to this, but it's really funny. She's like, Rihanna, you terrorist porn singer. I've learned of the reference afterwards, but it was just so like it's so crazy to think about how and maybe this is how we close out the episode, right? Is to think about okay, wait, give me a second here. Let me tie this in. how chains of logic, logical fallacies, right? Logical fallacies catch fire much more than detailed proofs and actual coherent chains of logic. People that are, fascist, populist, whatever tribal ideas, those can catch fire on catch fire through being trafficked in logical fallacies, right? Saying, hey, you don't like this country, get out of here. Hey, you're
Mhm.
not from this country, you can't talk about it, right? These are logical fallacies. Oh, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Or well, these two things are actually just the exact same. These are logical fallacies. Logical fallacies have no place in constructive argumentation other than to be made aware of so as to avoid, right? Logical fallacies are traps. There's yet there we see them weaponized
Mhm.
on giant aggregate scales. You work in digital marketing and advertising on the website, on the presentation part of it, right? You have to learn to speak a specific language to speak to people's psyches, people's penchants to buy, right? People are quick to buy logical fallacies.
Mhm.
Human rights can't operate with logical fallacies, right? The only reason uh, resistance, peaceful nonviolent resistance works is because this is like, look at the bad logic. We are gonna sacrifice our livelihood to show the world the bad logic. The problem now is that you could show the world the bad logic, but then a very special interest contingent can use their own bad logic to show you that showing bad logic was in itself bad logic, right? And it's not about you critically thinking how does logic work? How does one thing lead to the next? Is this causation or correlation? You don't critically think that. You're just like, this person is telling me this is good logic. This person is telling me this is bad logic. So I will go ahead because this person has bigger muscles. This person is more attractive. This person looks like they read
Mhm.
more books. This person is Ben Shapiro. They have a Harvard degree, so they must know, right? They must be using logic.
So when I have to make a website at work,
Hmm.
I'm handed a Google Drive folder with 20 photos, 30 headlines, and 4,000 words of text. So I get this, and it's like, all right, now go make a website out of it, right? So I'll make the website, right? But the only thing that prospective customers will see are the photos and the headlines. They're not going to read those 4,000 words about mulch or whatever I'm selling that day. And that's what logical fallacies are, these headlines, right? They can be condensed into these just short headlines, right? And then you have photos. Those are your logical fallacies in the memes, right? Or they when using memes to push these logical fallacies, right? But logical fallacies are debunked through those 4,000 words of text. But you have to read that text, right? You have to figure out, like, the critical thinking happens in that long bit of text, right? And nobody wants to read that long bit of text. They just headlines and photos. That's all it is. To get to the truth, you have to read the 4,000 words of text. But people don't want to do that.
Yeah, what was it like? Lie travels faster than the truth, and
Mm,
so you know we are running into that problem. And I've always wondered, and we kind of touched on this point in the conversation yesterday, where we're talking about, and I keep referring to this conversation as if it was, no, it was a good conversation, right? Like Madhav and I had a good conversation that friends of more than a decade would probably have, right? We're talking about our purpose and like what is the thing that drives, the work or what, you know, is, and my thing is like thinking about coded language and reprogramming and deflating certain logical fallacies that have been built up through repetition, deflating them through humor, or really by deflating them through satire, if possible. Satire, not necessarily through content, but satire in conversations, right? Using a sarcastic response to something or reframing something in such a way that it's like you see the futility of having a certain thought, or you start to see the potential insensitivity of having a certain thought. And so, when you think about this these different mechanisms and tools for bias confirmation, and how there's not people are never going to look at those 4,000 words, right? So it's like, how do we, the people that actually do look at the 4,000 words and try to understand the issue, how do we reframe the issue so it's comprehensive yet concise enough so as to deflate the bad logical fallacies that rely on constant reassurance, right? The big lie relies on a constant, reentrenchment of it, or beating down of it, right? It has to be repeated over and over and over. How do you come up with a certain framing device for each big lie just to put it out there that deflates it? The framing device doesn't need to be repeated, because perception is everything, right? If you're looking at a big lie and you are in a cult of personality and you're buying in hook, line, and sinker, somebody can give you an idea that makes you look at that big lie and it deflates your perception of it. And it's like, yo, what? Did I really believe that? Huh.
Right.
So my aim, and probably with this podcast, and like I said, we're gonna have better research next season. But with this podcast, is to try to come up with those different things. Well, especially within the realm of like race relations, microaggressions, fucking marginalization, and like colonialism, all this stuff, neocolonialism, the vestigial effects of colonialism, which is what I keep saying. But how do you come up with these different rhetorical devices that can reframe all of this negative coded language, all of these mechanisms that are used to whitewash history? Like, they're all rhetorical devices themselves that rely on constant repetition, that rely on arguments like, hey, you don't know as much as I know, so you can't speak on it. You're not from this country, so you can't speak on it. Oh, what, you're just Teen Vogue? You're writing articles now? What do you know? Right? You don't have authority. It's like, well, where do you derive this authority? Right? The authority ultimately derives from the content, right? The content of
Right.
the argument, the logical soundness of the argument. A 16-year-old Greta Thunberg or whatever can make an argument about environmental activism. The only reason it catches on because it's logically sound. And she doesn't need to repeat it. She doesn't need to say it. But her critics need to constantly repeat it. They need to constantly impeach her character.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's sort of the challenge, right? Figuring out, because you've seen, I mean, even just going simply, like, there are all these like fact checking services and stuff, right? And they take talking points from both sides, right? From both political or sides of the political spectrum. They take certain statements and talking points, and then they research and they figure out, are these things true or not? But like, even that's not good enough, apparently, right?
No, and then I know a lot of people don't like Saturday Night Live, but I watched this week. I watched a sketch that was on YouTube. They had I thought it was brilliant. They flipped it around. They had a network. It was making fun of Newsmax, which is a very conservative network. They had a network called Sportsmax for Jets fans, and right, so it's like they were arguing that uh, all these games that they lost, they actually did win,
Oh God. Okay.
right? And they're using all sorts of wonky logic and different logical fallacies, and it's like just the brilliance of flipping the framing, right? Let's look at what the way you guys are approaching these issues in terms of sports, right? If you were a lifelong fan of you were a big fan of the Saints, right?
Mm-hmm.
Football team, the Saints in New Orleans. You were in New Orleans. You know a lot about the Saints. Oh, let's say me coming in not knowing a damn thing is just like, yeah, man, no, the Saints aren't that. No, are you sure? No, I don't. No, I don't think you know. They didn't really win. You know that they're actually all pedophiles, and there's a basement with a pedophile ring underneath the Superdome. You know that, right? You know that for sure. The scores that you see aren't real. That's fake sports. So the fact, like, you would immediately be like, "What the fuck?" No, there are metrics for looking at sports. There are. And it's like, well, who's making the numbers? Who determines that? Right? The length to which they go with the doubt in sports is like deflated balls and bribed refs. That's it. They don't go beyond that. They're
Right.
never gonna question the agreed upon basis of factual information, the reality, right? They'll never question that. But it's like I thought it was brilliant how SNL reframed the fake news shit. Right? Is like this is just fake sports.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
And
I
so
gotta check
now,
that out. Yeah.
now anytime you run into that's fake news, it's you got a built-in rhetorical device to reframe it. It's like, oh yeah, that's like me saying that the football game that we both watched last night, the score wasn't real. That's like me saying that even though your team won, my team won.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh wait, that's very simple to understand. Huh, that's very simple to understand. You don't need to repeat it. I would constantly have to repeat. Well, no, the Saints actually lost that game. The Saints lost that game. I would have to repeat it to get everyone to believe it. No, the Saints. You know what? You're an idiot. You don't really know the Saints like I do. Yeah, sure. You were in New Orleans your whole life, but you don't know them like I do. I know who they really are. I know that they didn't lose that game. I know for a fact. You know how I know? Well, I can't tell you because I know in my heart and I have faith. And you know what? There's two sides to every story. You say that they won. Well, I say that they lost. And there's two sides to every story. Right now, I'm doing an impression of Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky, whose argument is that there's two sides to every story. So, hey, yeah, the scores on this football game, there's two sides to every story.
Has somebody given
This is
Trump
another logical fallacy, huh?
has somebody given him a participation trophy for like that 2020 election? Somebody should do that.
No, that's
It would piss his supporters off so much, right? Because they have that whole narrative like, these liberals.
Well, that's the whole thing. Like they conveniently drop it. Like I noticed that like around 2017, as you kind of stop hearing the word cuck, other than just like old white comedians still using it. But like you stop hearing that, you stop hearing the word snowflake. Now you're hearing calls for unity. By the way, Return the Jewel store. We got that cool hoodie that says accountability and unity is highlighted because unity is an accountability. Anyways, check it out. But yeah, no, now you're seeing all these calls for unity, and that's also just another bad faith.
Snowflake always messes me up because the first couple of times I ever heard that term, it was like early to mid 90s it was like in Don't Be a Menace, and then like on the Wayans brothers like sitcom they'd be talking about, but in that context Snowflake was just like a white girl.
Yeah.
So now every time when that word was like being used a whole bunch, like, you
I think it's
special
from like
snowflakes
Fight
or
Club,
whatever,
right?
Is it
all
was
these
it really?
guys, yeah, all these guys watch Fight Club, and they have
It was
they
like
have the
one
special edition
line.
DVD.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you're right. I remember being like one little like throwaway line kind of from it,
yeah.
but it ended up.
Yeah, like so examples of rhetorical devices, reprogramming coded language like Snowflake, safe spaces. Oh, people that stormed the Capitol, why don't you just call them social justice warriors? Right? Aren't they right? You've pejoratively coded that term. And the implication of that term is like, well, the advocacy you have isn't real or authentic. So I'm gonna sarcastically call you a warrior for social justice, right? So then it's like, okay, well, the advocacy you guys have isn't really authentic. So I'm going to sarcastically call you a social justice warrior, right? Why can't these terms be used and repurposed? Oh, you guys have this app called Parlor. Well, I guess they don't have it anymore. But you guys have this app called Parlor where you're kicking out, or you guys have this subreddit where you kick out anybody. So, safe space. Hmm. Oh, are you being, so you're saying that this is hurting your feelings because you think that me disagreeing, so, or okay, like let's say someone does get insulted and they're like, oh, I just a disagreement, and you don't have to be mean and hurt my, it's like, well, hmm, are you saying that you're too sensitive to have a debate? Can you not have a debate? Or hey, do you really think that the white man has it hard? Are you really sure you're seeing what you're seeing? Are you sure you're not imagining things? Right? Like, why can't
That-
all of these rhetorical things been repurposed? Right? Why? What was crazy to me, and I promise I'll end this after this. The 2016 election, right? Remember, they hated Hillary Clinton.
right.
No one could ever really pinpoint why they hated Hillary Clinton. It was like, oh, well, she's a corporatist or she's a war hawk. She's going to cause war and all of this. But then it really became like, oh, she didn't campaign in Michigan or was, and then it's like, if really think about what they're saying. What are they saying? What are they saying? She didn't come to my town and call me smart. She didn't court me. She didn't make me feel like the belle of the ball. Why would I vote for her? She didn't make me feel special. Who does she think she is looking so smart? Trying to be smart. Oh, being the most prepared person in the room. No, she didn't court me. She didn't tell me I'm smarter than the black people around me. She didn't tell me that. So yeah, she didn't campaign in Michigan. She didn't campaign in Wisconsin. She didn't come tell us that we're smarter than all the black people. So of course we're not going to vote for her.
Jeez.
Right? Like, how is that not what those arguments were?
Yeah.
She didn't court me. Hillary didn't court me. She should have courted me. I need to be courted.
Well, that was
Tell me
before
I'm the
she.
belle of the ball. Don't call me deplorable. Oh, it
Yeah,
hurts my
exactly. That's
feelings.
what.
You call me deplorable, that hurts my feelings. How dare I can't be deplorable? I'm the best person there is. I know everything. Okay, if I didn't know everything, I wouldn't beat my wife every day. You know, like that's who these people are. But like, right? Like, isn't it? It's. Why didn't she court me?
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I don't know, but it just points to like, how do you even have the conversation? Like, so some of the examples that you were giving, like I don't know, how do you even have those conversations?
Shame,
Really?
shame, humor, shame,
Mm,
humor. What is all of it? What is all of it? Right? All the conservative pundits or whatever,
mm-hmm.
they're like, oh, they're not cool like Hollywood media cool, rappers are cool, cool, popularity, platform. No, they're denying us this platform. That's our civil rights or free speech. No, they want access to spaces that marginalized people have to create for themselves through careful self segregation as a result of self defense against these people who are constantly trying to get access. That's it. They want to be viewed as the cool in people, but then they're going to use a horrible fucking logic that, is psychopathy, that it clearly lacks any sort of shred of empathy. They'll use that kind of logic in their regular lives, and they'll probably use it because on internet forums, that's how they get camaraderie. A lot of these dudes that storm the Capitol, they're like, well, these are my bowling buddies. These are my buddies for life, just because, we can hate another race together. We go to these clan meetings together. You know, we got each other. We got each other on speed dial. Like they build their camaraderie through it because they're shunned because of just being shitty people. And that's how that's literally the shame. They feel shame, and then they're gonna argue with you about, like, how dare you make me feel shame? And it's like, man, how dare you not feel shame?
Actually, so with that, the owner of like the biggest local grocery store here in New Orleans actually like went to the Capitol, and he was like posting pictures on Facebook, like, here with all my other patriots, that day. So he didn't storm it. He was there. So there's been a boycott, like, since that happened, pretty much. Like, I mean, obviously not the whole city or whatever, but quite a few people are no longer shopping there. So like finally, like 3 weeks out from that, he actually like went on one of the local black radio stations and was like, he wanted to apologize and give his side of the story and all of that. But
Say, hey man, you gave
crazy.
your side of the story with the pictures. Like, you already did.
But yeah, if I remember, he did kind of victim that he was like, sort of like, we were just there because it was our president's last couple of days, and then all of a sudden, those crazies, we don't even know who they were, just started just storming the Capitol and being violent and this and that. I don't know, but yeah, it's
But
I just
after they stormed the Capitol, I had to delete all their contacts from my list when I was told that it was not good for business.
yeah, it's just hard, man. I don't have any answers for or any even possible solutions for a lot of
I mean, that's why I
the shit
guess
I've
we
heard.
do this podcast or whatever for the two people that do listen. We're going to find you. I'm going to find you, and I'm going to send you a hoodie, you two people
Well,
that
you've been
do listen. Even though
you've definitely been shouting out those two people a lot during this episode, so I'm
yeah,
sure they're happy.
I'm going to find them. I know the metrics tell me one of you is in the UK. Oh, man. Yo, I know that there's so much we could have talked about and everything. This is already a very long episode, but I do appreciate you coming on. I'm gonna have you come and play an active role in this whole project, podcast, whatever I have going on. But we'll work on it. But I just like, this is good, and for you two people that are listening, Madhav really is one of my first friends. So this is, um, that's why I didn't really want to get into. It's like, oh, who are you? What qualifies you? What do we want to talk? Because it's like, oh, we'll have you on. We'll talk. We'll have a good talk. You do what you do. I do what I do, and But like the thing is that take our perspective for how you take it. Obviously, I tell you the limits to which I'm informed or uninformed, and Madhav does the same. So but yeah, dude, I appreciate having you on. Um, I mean, shit.
Yeah, maybe you can fact check some of the things that we were questionable about and put it
So much
in the
work.
description or something.
Oh,
I think
so
there were 2 points, the 2 questions. I think one, who was the Emperor Heather,
okay.
and then the other one was like, I guess, the evolution of the United Kingdom in terms of
Oh
demographically.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure
Braveheart.
those are two quick Google
We're gonna
searches.
we're gonna find out that Braveheart was uh shit. What is that word? Embellished. All right. Madhav Saxena, anything you want to plug? I mean, to the two people?
Instagram at Madhav Saxena. You can see random film photos, things like that, and photos of my dog. More importantly,
Patty Dog. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay.
But no, that's it.
Okay, dope. Yeah. Check out Madhav. Yeah, no, he's not really selling anything. He's not really pushing anything. This was just a good conversation about shit that you wouldn't really hear this perspective usually between us, because these are the kind of conversations we don't like to have with people outside of us. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thanks for watching. Check us out at returnthejewels.com or on social media at returnthejewels to watch more videos. You can subscribe right there, or you can watch a random video right here. Like, share, and subscribe. Tell all your friends.